This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Hover, my choice for domain name registration. Lots of people talk about quality domain name hosting and transfer, but Hover actually delivers on their promises with smart, simple tools, truly outstanding customer service, and a no-wait phone support policy that really is just that. If you already have domains, if you are ready to purchase domains, and if you want a simple, no-nonsense, no high-pressure experience, then you need to check out Hover at hover.com. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the Talk of the Mac community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. And I'm pleased to have on for the first time Mr. Jim Sherhart, the Senior Director for Marketing at Drobo. Jim, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Absolutely, Chuck. Pleasure to be here.
I've been anxious to have you on, Jim. We've crossed paths a couple times, and we could never seem to make it work. And then you made some announcements, and I said, I've just got to get you on to talk about these. And, of course, then we both promptly went on vacation for a week. So now we're here, and I want to ask you to introduce us to the newest versions of Drobo. The listeners and viewers of the shows know that I'm a Drobo fan. I've got 4 of them sitting here, and now you're about to make me add to my collection.
Either add or certainly improve your collection. Yeah, so we're extremely excited. I think it's probably been overdue in terms of Drobo coming out with some Thunderbolt products. And I think, the 5D for a lot of people. So we announced 2 products. So we announced a 5D and a Drobo Mini, and I'll kind of maybe explain some of the details later. But I think the 5D was expected. I think for a lot of people, the Mini was a pleasant surprise. And a lot of it, the reason we did it is a lot of the feedback came from the creative community. So a lot of our Mac fans said, hey, I'm frequently on the road. I'm frequently doing stuff. It'd be great to have a Drobo that I could take with me. And so we're really excited about the new products. I think people are going to be very happy with them.
You've made some interesting decisions in creating these products. Some seem like a very natural evolution. Some were, frankly, a little surprising. But let's talk about the 5 first.
Sure.
That's more the desktop model. That's a little more in line with what people are familiar with about Drobo.
Yeah. So, I mean, the 5D for a lot 5D. Of people is going to look like a natural replacement for the Drobo S. And, that's essentially what it is. So whereas the Drobo S has USB 3, eSATA, FireWire interfaces, we basically consolidated that down to Thunderbolt interface, so a dual Thunderbolt for full pass-through and daisy chain, and then a single USB 3. So we did make a decision to move away from FireWire and also move away from eSATA. eSATA is very fast, but very difficult to get going. So I think that product for sure was probably expected. I think maybe the technology that we've done, or I should say how we've implemented the solid-state drives into our devices, was maybe a real pleasant surprise for a lot of people. The fact that we allow you to do both spinning hard drives and solid-state drives, I think, is going to be a real positive for people that want to boost their performance, but maybe don't want to spend a ton of money or give up capacity.
Yeah, let's talk about the interfaces first. I guess it shouldn't be a real big surprise to any of us, given the announcements that Apple has made about the way they seem to be going with we haven't seen desktops yet to any significant degree, but certainly with the laptops, that the new MacBook Pro with Retina only comes with USB 3, and Thunderbolt. So you seem right in line with that for the Apple community.
Yeah, a lot of people think we had some kind of insider information, but we actually didn't. As a lot of people know, Apple is very secretive about it, and we had to make some guesses based on what Intel was doing and what some other folks were doing, and we had to make some trade-offs too, because we want to make sure that we're able to offer these products at a price point that is approachable to people. And so the decision to remove FireWire was mostly one of cost. So it allowed us to keep the cost down, but it looks like it was probably the right decision based on where Apple's going.
Yeah, and for those of us that have legacy Drobo machines, we still have USB connectivity, USB 2, certainly. I'm sure there are going to be some adapters that come out. We already have a Thunderbolt to FireWire adapter that Apple has announced. So we're certainly not left behind, but we are left longing for the new Drobo.
Yeah, I mean, and the other decision, honestly, is the fact that the performance on these new Drobos are going to be so improved over previous models. that FireWire really would have been, it would have easily maxed out FireWire. And I think, whereas people maybe know Drobo to be easy to use and easy to scale, maybe they haven't necessarily thought about Drobos as being fast. And we want to make sure that with these new products, that's really the message we get across, is that Drobo now kind of delivers on all three, being the ease of use and the scalability they've always brought. Now we're really bringing the performance. And so whereas FireWire may have been a bottleneck, clearly with USB 3 and Thunderbolt, there's plenty of bandwidth.
Have you made changes internally to the operating system of Drobo to achieve that speed, or are we talking strictly about the speed that comes with the faster interfaces?
So there's we've made some pretty significant changes internally, both to the hardware and the software architecture. So from a hardware standpoint, whereas for example, if you looked at the previous generation Drobo S, we were running a single core processor that was running about 800 megahertz, just for example. And these new products are going to be dual core, running at about 1.2 gigahertz per core. So if you kind of look at that, that's about a 3x bump just in processing power. We significantly boosted the memory, and what we've also done is we've also brought in a completely new software architecture that not only takes advantage of and leverages that new hardware, but also brings some of the enhancements we've made with solid-state drive tiering down into these prosumer products as well. So a lot of changes. So completely new software, completely new hardware. So we really want to be able to take full advantage of the interfaces we have.
And during the press conference call, when you said that these new Drobos will accept SSDs, my brain started to hurt. As far as capacity and speed with Thunderbolt, if they perform half as well as they're supposed to, it's going to be a huge quantum leap for all of us that are using these technologies.
Yeah, and I think where the biggest benefit's going to be from the use of solid-state drives. So just so people know, our implementation is such that you can do all spinning hard drives, you can do all solid state, or you can do a combination of the two. And that we're calling it the Drobo accelerator bay. We've essentially done an additional drive under the bottom that takes a small form factor solid state drive. In our mind, is going to give you the best of both worlds, where you can do the capacity of hard drives with a little bit of solid state on the front end that'll essentially act as an intelligent cache. And so you get the benefit, you get the best of both worlds. Where that's going to provide a huge boost, we feel, is when people are doing real-world things like multitasking. So the streaming performance is going to be great, and a lot of that's going to come from the spinning hard drives. What you don't want to have happen is your streaming performance go from, say, 300 megabytes a second to 30 when you go and do another task on that storage device. And that's what you'll see with a lot of systems that are just using traditional hard drives, and that's where the solid-state drive is going to be a huge boost. You're going to be able to multitask, and you're going to be able to see that streaming performance maintain 90+% of the throughput that it saw before the other tasks were coming on board.
So are you saying, or am I just jumping to conclusions, that the solid-state drive, if you have that option there, is going to almost act as a buffer kind of drive?
It will, but it'll act as an intelligent buffer. So, for example, if we see large sequential streams coming at the Drobo, it's smart enough to know that that's actually something that should go directly to the spinning hard drives, on a write occasion. Same thing with a read request is going to be directed to the spinning hard drives, because once that gets started, once you get past the latency, it's going to move very fast. Whereas a request coming in that is random in nature and maybe smaller file sizes, maybe you're opening an application that has a lot of indexed JPEGs, for example, or a lot of thumbnails. That is a small sort of transactional I/O operation that can really slow down an array, especially if there's another operation going on. So that's where the huge boost is going to be, is that it's able to intelligently make that determination and get the right request on the right drives immediately, so that all the performance is going to improve on the device. So it'll be a really huge boost, I think, to certain people. We're actually trying to think up the benchmarks and how we're going to show that off, but we think there's going to be a lot of real world scenarios where that's going to be pretty obvious.
I have to ask, because before we move on, what kind of price point are we talking about here? And is this going to be a situation where I buy it bare and populate with my drives, or can I buy drives from you with it pre-populated?
Yeah, so we offer both ways. So we offer them bare because one of the benefits of Beyond Rate is end users can use any drives. That's one of the things people love about it. So we'll continue to offer that option. And we'll offer some bundled with drives because some people just want the convenience. The reality is we quite honestly don't want to be in the drive business because it's a tough business to be in, and let's face it, Western Digital and Seagate do a great job with that. And all we're doing is repackaging that. So we'll sell it bare. So the Mini, we're going to include Thunderbolt cables with both of these products, which we think is going to be a huge advantage. I think we're going to be the first to actually do that. It's just been a challenge between cost and availability trying to find the cables. But the Mini is going to start at a price point of $649, including the Thunderbolt cable, and then the 5D will start at a price point of $849, including the Thunderbolt cable. And those, of course, are list prices. Street pricing you can expect to see, vary a little bit. And then the beauty is you can buy your drives from anywhere you want. Even the small form factor solid state drive that goes in the bottom, that MSATA SSD. There's probably dozens of manufacturers that you can buy those from, B&H Photo, Amazon, really into the e-tailers that currently sell Drobos as well.
I'm glad you brought up the fact that you're including the Thunderbolt cable. That encourages me, number one, to use it to the best, fastest performance if my Mac has a Thunderbolt port. But it also sort of perpetuates that Drobo thing where you've always put the cables in. I've always been able to unpack this. And oh no, I got to go to Best Buy or somewhere and get a cable before I get to play with it. I mean, the drives are one thing, but the including of a cable, it seems like a little thing, but in the case of Thunderbolt, it's not.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And we did a lot of research on that, and we actually made the decision to include the cable for out-of-box experience, because that's always been a big thing with Drobo. And we actually think we're going to improve on that a lot with these new products. So these will be true retail packaging. We're completely reworking the initial configuration experience for people so that it's easier. And including the cables is you gotta do it. I think if you're going to give a good out of box experience with a storage device.
Before we leave the 5D, I want to make sure I ask this: what size drives, what kind of drives will this handle? Are there any limitations? I know we've talked about the smaller form factor SSD. But are there any limitations on what I can put in the other bays?
No limitations at all. As long as it's a 3.5-inch SATA drive, whether that's a solid state drive or a regular spinning disk, it's going to work just fine. And in terms of capacity, we had a 2 terabyte limitation. I think we've eliminated the last of that about 6 months ago. So the reality is now there's no limitation on the drive size. The only limitation is the drives that are available. So if you want to take a 5D, for example, load that up with 4 terabyte drives, in single disk redundancy, you'd have probably about 15 and change terabytes usable capacity, and something about the size of a 2-slot toaster. And then you could throw a decent size solid state drive in the MSATA slot, and you could have a whole lot of capacity and a whole lot of performance, for a really reasonable price.
And I don't have to worry about mixing and matching platter speeds.
That's right. Now we do recommend, if you're especially for any crowd that might be doing video editing or something like that, a minimum of 7,200 RPM drives. But there's no hard limit. People can mix and match the speed. What'll happen is if you put some 54 or 5,900 RPM drives and some faster ones, is you won't necessarily see the performance boost of the faster drives. So if you need the performance, I would keep the 7,200 RPM as sort of a low threshold, and that's where you're going to get the best bang for the buck in terms of drive performance and price.
Jim, in my enthusiasm to start talking about the new Drobos, I'm afraid I was a little negligent. Let's review for the listeners and viewers exactly what a Drobo is and why they should be as excited as I am about it.
So really the original concept of a Drobo is to have a very simple way to protect your digital assets, because everybody's life is moving to a digital format, whether it's photos, videos, music. And that's becoming some of the most valuable assets that people have. And the concept of a lot of people, their collections are outgrowing individual drives, and the concept of RAID for a lot of people is intimidating. So what we have is a storage array that accepts multiple drives and scales to very large sizes, that doesn't require any RAID configuration, is literally as easy to use as a USB drive. And so that's sort of the concept behind Drobo, and that's what we delivered with Beyond RAID. We've got a couple 100,000 in the field that are doing exactly that, protecting people's digital lives. And so really what we're doing now is I think bringing some modern interfaces in and bringing some significant performance boosts to people that are fans of Drobo and are just looking for a little bit more.
I love the reliability. I love the fact that I'm not buying into something that I'm locked into. that as the drive sizes increase, as the prices go down, I can constantly upgrade, number one, without having to buy a new case or new enclosure of any kind. But probably at least as importantly, I don't have to do a lot of that copying things off to a drive and then copying it all back on when I'm doing that transition. Just pop one drive out, pop another one in, and I'm upgraded.
Yep. And that's, that's the beauty of it. I tell a lot of people it should be the last drive enclosure you ever have to buy. And I was just talking to somebody recently, and he was saying, I don't understand why Drobo over a USB drive. And I said, well, a lot of people, have multiple USB drives because maybe they started with a 500 gig and they bought a terabyte and then a 2 or a 3, and they're not sure what's stored on what or what data's been protected or backed up. And that really is the beauty, is you can take all that information, consolidate it on a single device, and that it's protected against hard drive failure. And it's as simple to scale as going out and buying a drive and either putting it in or removing a smaller drive and putting it in. So that's definitely the beauty of it.
Yeah, and also just the convenience of having a large drive like that. But you're right. I've got an office that's littered with old, smaller USB drives or FireWire drives for that matter. And it's I've gotten to the point, and that's why I ended up with 4 Drobos, is because it's so convenient to put the stuff on there and know that it's protected. And I should find some wood to knock on, but I've never lost data in a Drobo, and I've lost it in other things.
Yeah, well, that's obviously that's great to hear, and the proof's in the pudding, and that's why we like a lot of the people that we talk to use Drobo, because we believe in the product. I use Drobo at home myself, and trust me, if I ever lost my kids' photos or videos, that'd be a very difficult conversation with my wife. So one I hope I never have to have. And in fact, my FS. I'm cheap, so I use green drives. But then again, I don't need a ton of performance. But I literally put that thing in my closet a couple of years ago and have migrated my iTunes and my iPhoto library over, in addition to having all of our videos ripped in. I've never even had a drive failure on that. So it's just been sitting in my closet, rock solid, doing its thing. And I think that's the beauty of Drobo. With a couple 100,000 out there, we got a lot of people that it just kind of quietly does its job, and people are very happy with it. I think for some people, though, if they're doing creative stuff, they just want a little more performance, and that's what we hope they'll see with the 5D and the Mini.
Yeah. Well, you're right. This is the last drive enclosure I need until you guys brought up the new ones, and now I need more.
But here's the beauty of that, Chuck, is that you can just take your drives out of your existing Drobos and migrate them right over. So, for example, if you've got a Drobo 4-bay or a Drobo S, we have enabled basically a migration called disk pack migration, where we'll let you literally take all the disks out, data intact, put it into a modern or newer Drobo chassis, and you're good to go. And so for a lot of people, that makes the decision a little bit easier. So, but also it takes something that could be maybe hours or days of migrating data down to a 15-minute operation.
That's a great point, and I see that as sometimes a misconception of Drobo. You're sitting there with all these bays, and people think they have to invest a lot of money to fill those bays, and you don't. To start with, you can put drives in as you're able to afford them or need them, and not fill up all the bays in any given Drobo.
Yeah, exactly, and that's actually what I recommend to people. When they ask what drives they should use or what capacity they should buy, I say, well, how much storage you need? Because you should literally buy what you need and then a very little more than that to give yourself a little bit of buffer. But defer it as long as you can, because we know the drives are going to get bigger and they're going to get less expensive. So it's a very simple. In the Drobo, the way that it works with the capacity indicators and the LEDs on the drives, it's going to tell you when it needs storage. So you really don't need to worry about it till the Drobo tells you, hey, I need a little bit more space.
Okay, it's time to get to the Drobo Mini, because this is the one. As much as I was salivating over the 5D, the Drobo Mini, I think, is really exciting as more of us go even more mobile, and we have storage needs that go beyond the SSDs we can put in the new MacBook Pro with Retina or the MacBook Airs, but we still want the reliability and the expandability of Drobo. You guys have addressed that with the Mini.
Yeah, and this is that's exactly who the feedback came from. So we've got a very large audience of what we call creative professionals, but also even mobile professionals, just people that are road warriors that are traveling with a significant amount of data. and they may be traveling with an external USB drive today, and they want to have protected storage with them on the go. And especially if you talk about a creative professional being on location, maybe even being gone for months at a time, if they've got multiple jobs that are outside of their home office, the Mini is going to be a great tool with them. And it's it has the chance to revolutionize workflow for a lot of people. If a workflow today for a videographer or photographer out there today is multiple USB drives and Sharpie pens and manually dragging and dropping, the ability to use a single device and attach one cable and be done with it, I think for a lot of people is going to be it's going to be huge.
So give us all the details, because I have them now memorized, but
I have one here with me if you want me to.
Oh no.
Well, it'll show up, but actually, do you have it? So you can kind of get a sense for the size right here. It's about 7 inches by 7 inches by about 1.8 inches high. It has a magnetic faceplate, just like existing Drobos, so you can kind of see. I don't know how well that shows up. You can kind of see the drive manual in there. Then you can see the 4 2.5-inch drive bays. What you'll see is these white light pipe indicators around here, basically the drive LEDs. And then you see a continuous one here, which is the capacity LED. So it's a continuous bar as opposed to discrete LEDs on the Mini. Also on the back, you can see the interfaces. So we've got the dual Thunderbolt and the USB 3. You can also see 2 variable speed cooling fans. So we put a lot of thought into not only making sure these are fast, but making sure that they run nice and cool and they're nice and quiet as well. So we actually put a lot of time and money into studying the acoustics. Because that was actually, aside from performance, probably the next complaint for people is the fan's kind of loud, and I'd like to keep it on my desk. Could you make it a little quieter? So we actually have made it significantly quieter. But the Mini, there's so many design aspects of it that are unique. Even the material itself, the casing, is a new kind of carbon fiber that actually is a metallized carbon fiber. So not only does it, is it lightweight and look like plastic, but it actually has a very nice feel to it, and it actually provides the EMI shielding. We've got a new drive mechanism for the 2.5-inch drives here that I'll show you. That literally pops in and out. So we still use a bare drive, no carriers. That's been a big advantage with Drobo. You don't have to mess around with screwdrivers. But literally, the drives just pop in and out, almost like an SD card. So it's a great mechanism. It weighs probably about 1.5 pounds empty, maybe a little less than 3 pounds completely full. It'll have a carrying case with it. We mentioned the SSD accelerator bay. You can actually, I don't know how well this is going to show up. You can see a little slot here on the bottom. But I think this is really slick because if you think about it, 4-slot Drobo, while that can certainly hold good capacity with larger 3.5-inch drives, it's a little bit limited in the 2.5-inch drive size. And so the ability, I think, to put an SSD in the bottom here is going to be a huge advantage for a lot of people. So anyway, there's the SSD accelerator bay, and I actually have what an mSATA SSD looks like. So it's a very tiny. It's almost like a DIMM module, and you can buy those, like I said, from pretty much any manufacturer, starting at like $40 or $50 for one of the smaller capacity ones. So it's I think for people on the road, it's going to be a great design. Now it does require more power than we can do via bus. That was a big request for a lot of people. But what we have done, which I think is also a nice kind of thoughtful design, is custom designed power supply that you can kind of get a sense for the size of the supply. It's very small, and all of this is going to fit in an optional carrying case that we'll have as well. So we'll have a lot of good accessories. We're actually working with a company right now to come up with a battery pack. So if people are out and about and they need to run the Drobo Mini for maybe 4 or 5 hours on a shoot or on location, and they don't have a power supply or a power source, they'll be able to continue working. So it's an exciting product.
What's the maximum capacity of the Mini?
So with the current drives, I've seen 1.5s, I think, that are about to come out, 1.5 terabyte drives. The largest I've seen commonly available today is about a terabyte size. So you figure minus the data protection, you're probably looking at about 2.7 to 2.8 terabytes of real usable protected storage space today. But the beauty is people can, put in the capacity or the drives that they need, and when larger drives are available, obviously we'll support those. Because I do know that 1.5 terabytes and 2 terabytes are coming out soon. We've even seen close to terabyte solid state drives, but I think that'll be cost prohibitive for a lot of folks.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so. Is this one single or double redundancy?
This will actually support both. So this will do single drive redundancy, or it does support the dual drive redundancy. So the nice thing about that is going forward, really every Drobo will support up to two, drive failures, which, the probability of two drives failing at the same time is close to zero. But we all know when that first drive fails, it goes into a rebuild mode, and that puts a lot of stress on the hard drives. And with the drive capacities getting bigger, that is a valid concern for a lot of people. And so having that extra protection, if it's irreplaceable data you never want to lose, is sort of a nice insurance policy, because the probability of more than two drives failing, within maybe a 4 to 6 hour window would be pretty rare.
And I think it's a pretty big deal on a mobile device, because they're going to get bounced around a lot more, no matter how careful you are, no matter how great your carrying case is. The simple fact is you're still moving them around. So the double redundancy makes probably as much or more sense here than it does necessarily on the desktop.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and in fact, one of the things I didn't mention is, on the case as well, there's actually a rubberized coating on it as well, which allows you to get a pretty good grip on the device as well. Which so that'll be, because we want to we know it's going to get handled. We want to make sure that that we've kind of put some thought into the design of how that's going to happen to make sure that that's also an advantage.
So what's the availability of both the 5D and the Mini?
So we haven't announced availability. We're probably going to announce it next week. So I don't want to speculate on what that's going to be, because, but I would say that late August is probably a safe time frame. So in that, we'll announce a specific date next week. We're working on a couple key engineering milestones that will have better confidence in the dates, but it's certainly not going to be a an October sort of date. But late August is looking like when we're going to start shipping these out.
So I should start saving my pennies now, in other words.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's been, it was interesting. So the Mini was something that I think a lot of us knew could be a really exciting product, but without a lot of definable use cases, other than, because you could really say that having a mobile RAID array is, almost somewhat of a niche product. But it's been unbelievable, the response we've gotten, and we've already seen people coming up with creative ways in which they'd use it that we didn't even think about in the development of the product. But we've had, I want to say, a little over 10,000 people sign up on our information form. And the number 1, 2, and 3 question are, when are you going to start taking orders? When will it ship? And how much is it going to cost? Pretty much in that order. And so the demand, we're actually, we really want to take pre-orders, because we want to make sure that we've got the supply to be able to satisfy the demand, because it's been pretty overwhelming. But that's great. So we're excited. We're really excited about this product.
Well, and I think it also is a testament to Drobo's reliability, the customer service, everything that you all have done. And again, I've said this on the show. Sure, I've had a couple issues with my Drobos. I mean, they're hardware, and there are some moving parts in there, and it happens. But the customer service has always been amazing. Usually it's just been a matter of, walking me through a couple software fixes, and that's it. But even with that, I have absolutely no complaints. I feel completely secure with all 4, and my big thing is just going to have to be at number 5, maybe number 6 now.
We like that problem, Chuck.
I'm sure you do. Jim, where should we send folks to get more information on not just the 5D and the Mini, but the whole Drobo family?
Yeah, sure. So the best place to go is our website. So it's just www.drobo.com. And obviously the Mini's featured on the homepage. They can navigate to any of those products. And if they want to get more information, if they go to the Mini product page, they'll find a click through where they can sign up, and we'll make sure to notify them when we start taking orders or when the products actually start shipping as well.
Terrific. Well, thanks so much for being on. You're always welcome, because it's always fun to talk about a product that I enjoy as much as Drobo.
It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I promise I'll have a nicer background next time.
Well, you do look like you might be in witness protection or an interrogation room or something. So.
I promise. I'm at Drobo's office.
Sure. Folks, that's Jim Sherhart. He is the Senior Director of Marketing for Drobo, talking about the new Drobo 5D and Drobo Mini. Check our show notes. I'll have links to everything so that you can go right there and get on the list and find out more and when you can get yours. Until the next time, this is Mac Voices. I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. MacVoices TV is part of the MacVoices Group at MacVoicesGroup.com. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at BackbeatMedia.com.